Abantu bafuna ukwazi ngekusasa ngaso sonke isikhathi. Abantu abathanda ukwazi ukuthi izolo kwenzekani. Manje khona akekho noyedwa uzihlupha. Ingabe wena uyazi ukuthi umlando wethu uthini?
Ek is jou nie verkoop, man. Ek het daarin geplan, maar nie vir jou.
Stealing is one thing, Johnny. Playing with terrorists is another. Maybe I should tell your prison mates why you got out on good behavior last time.
Wat nou masimba lawa? Jy moet my nou help.
You don't go speel.
Kuzofuneka wena umele ubudoda bakho. Thuba ngena kanye empilweni yomuntu. Ungazange ubambe lolu
inhliziyo ukubona ukuthi akunalutho engikutholayo ngalo mthwalo onzima kangaka.
It's really great to meet you.
Yeah, likewise.
Where are you right now? I know you're in South Africa, but where?
No. I'm in Berlin. I live in Berlin.
You're in Berlin.
Yes, and I'm in
South Africa.
No, Berlin, Germany.
I was thinking, great, Athens to Berlin. This is great.
I'm in a temporary office space. I need a space because I've got a grandchild at home, and I need peace and quiet.
Yeah.
So,
sure.
But it's weird because there's nobody here. Everybody's got used to home office.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Well, what brings you to Berlin? Are you live there full time now?
Yeah, almost 24 years.
Okay.
Yeah,
what was the motivation to move out of South Africa into Europe?
You know, it's not completely as random as throwing the I Ching or anything like that, but it wasn't a deep, long-seated plan. It was a frustration of being an indie filmmaker and projects taking too long and financing too long. And at a blink of an eye, 10 years go by and you think, nah, it's got to be better than that. Mm-hmm. So Berlin in 2000 was still, not that it's not now, but it was still a very exciting place. And I think a lot of opportunity for artists and, it was a crazy edge. So we just did it. Me and my wife, we took the chance, and I started doing television as well. And my first movie was a comedy. I'd never done this before, and I thought, oh my God, is this going to be a career wrecker? It turned out to be one of the most successful comedies on German television ever, and I became known as the comedy director. So I've got these two different careers.
Yeah. What was it, a episodic or was it a film?
No, it was a movie. It was a movie. It's less now, but Germany has a tradition of doing TV movies, straight to television movies. Yeah.
Well, now it's all a blur, isn't it? With
it is. Yeah, absolutely.
Streaming and cable. I mean, there really isn't much of a.
Sure.
So are you still actively directing?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. I wrote a script 4 Tim Roth, and he's waiting patiently and is very supportive for our financing to close. So yeah, I've got a project, and I hope we finally have a co-production which looks good. So I'm hoping next year we can shoot this.
Mm-hmm.
And and I've got 2 or 3 other projects for cinema. The South African ones I haven't given up on, but they take so long, and it's weird how flavors work. And South Africa is not the flavor of the decade. It sounds very cynical, and I don't feel like that. But it's hard to interest people in stories from South Africa.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Is there? Would you say there's a film community there?
Oh yeah. There's quite a vibrant film community, and there's interesting filmmakers.
Is
And
it largely in like Johannesburg or Cape Town, or where would you say it is?
it's a mixture, but I think Johannesburg, for all its inner city infrastructural collapse, maybe a bit like Detroit, is the more interesting place, and has a very interesting hybrid of predominantly black young intelligentsia who is not scared to take risks artistically and have interesting things to say. So, it's not something when you open up a glossy magazine that hits you immediately, Johannesburg, but the place is fascinating, and then the energy is as well. And now and again, very good films come out of it as well.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm sure. And when I was down in New York, going to the festivals there, like the one we mentioned, the New York Film Festival, but there's others. I was a lot more entrenched in international world cinema.
Right.
Up here, I'm not really going to as many festivals, and when I do, and there are a few up here, it's wonderful, but they're mostly. And I went to, the what I don't know. There's a number between this part and then New England and what have you, but they're more American, primarily oriented, festivals.
Yes.
With exceptions, of course, but not like you would get in a real world cinema film festival, which I miss, I have to say. But and you can certainly get some of that, screen it and stream it, but it's not the same. It's so great to still go to the cinema.
Yeah, absolutely. We just had the Berlin Film Festival, and
oh wow, yeah,
and I enjoy it for what it is. And not every film will get a cinema distribution from there. That doesn't mean it's a bad movie, right? So,
right, of course,
yeah. But this is the world we live in. There's a very quick judgment. Oh, that'll never run in cinemas. But there are a lot of great stories that get shown.
And it could just be, oh, we just saw something similar to that, which was a big hit lately, and we don't want another one. We don't need another one. So before we get right into
yes,
Mapantsula,
yes,
and did I pronounce it right? Mapantsula?
Mapantsula.
Mapantsula. I do want to just, because of what happened just before we got on Zoom, or I just want to send out a message so I can devote my entire attention, because otherwise this is going to nag me. And we are a very small operation there, so we're all like play a big part in how we communicate there. So it's not like one person is just communicating. So there's been a change in our schedule today, and nobody really knows yet. So I'm going to send a message to everybody. And again, I apologize.
No.
But I'll edit this out even.
Well, it's quite a funny it's a very funny concept, right? So a podcast that gets interrupted every 5 minutes by the real world.
Well, there are some that I wish they would, actually, but that's another problem. Okay, Paul, let's see. Yeah, it's Dave. Let's see, MK. It's really something. Brian. Rick. There we go. I think I got it ready. Reschedule. Okay. It's off. Okay. Feel much better now.
Okay.
Surprised that, and it's one of those cases where we slid right into talking about, film and living in Berlin or here in the States. But so I'll edit in such a way where I'll keep in the majority of what we've been talking about, if it's okay with you, even though I didn't say we're officially starting. But I always have that issue when people will say, "Or have we started?" Yeah.
No. Please, it's
Okay.
It's communication. It's fine.
Exactly. Getting back to it. I was so happy for the opportunity to see Mapantsula, which is a film I wasn't aware of, but grateful now to have to be. And there's something about that era of filmmaking, which kind of remind me of stuff, independent film you'd see here in the States as well. That kind of budget, the music, the aesthetics of it. Of course, we didn't have apartheid, here in the States.
No.
But the biggest surprise, I guess, was like to read that this was the first film to come out of South Africa, which actively dealt with apartheid. And of course, there were some other Hollywood films, even, or films from probably a number of different countries that dealt with apartheid subsequently.
Yeah. And shot outside of the country at that time.
And shot where?
In other countries.
Oh, okay, right. Yeah.
A World Apart, Cry Freedom. They dealt with apartheid, but they weren't shot in South Africa at that time.
That would have been tricky.
Yeah. Well, we got around that.
You did. Well, that is, a key part of the conversation, right? Is how you kind of tricked the authorities, but you kind of stole a film in a way. You stole the entire shot. Everybody thought probably you were shooting something other than Mapantsula, right? And the story behind it. You would never have been able to get away with that during apartheid. Were you shooting in like mid '80s then? Tell me a little bit of
we were shooting in 1987, which was the height of the worst time of apartheid, and it was the worst time in terms of torture, repression, because there was so much kickback against it and so much protest that it got increasingly violent, the methods that the police used against opposition people. So that's why it was absolutely the most incredibly violent time in the history of it before it finally ended, so for us and for me, there was never a question about the legitimacy of lying to get this film made. And I just saw something on the Berlinale that reaffirmed this for me in a different way, because I sat through the whole of Claude Lanzmann's Shoah, and then I watched a new film by a filmmaker about the making of Shoah, where he had access to the whole archive, and he goes into the debate where Claude Lanzmann realized he cannot get official permission from these Nazis. I am Claude Lanzmann. I am a Jew. I want to interview you about the crimes you committed against humanity. So he changed his name. He had a cover story, and that's how he did it. Mm-hmm. And these are situations where the regular rules don't apply. And I think I'm so glad we did it, because it was an act of rebellion, and any act of rebellion was important. But because we shot this film inside the country, it's more authentic, I think, than a lot of the other films that were made with all good intentions and with great directors and everything. But it has an immediacy that is not just a story, it's a story where the time and where it's set is incredibly important.
Tell me how just give me more details as best as your memory serves you, because we're going on 40 years now. You were a very young guy, obviously, right? Did you? What were your circumstances? Did you go to film school? Did you just learn by the seat of your pants, or fly by the seat of your pants?
I studied fine arts. I wanted to go to film school, but the only film school in South Africa was an incredibly conservative reactionary film school. So I went to university, to art school. They promised a film course. I got there. There was no film course. So I started doing interdisciplinary kind of work. I eventually worked in Super 8. I went to see every indie film on the Cape Town Film Festival I could. I then became an editor for 2 years and started writing the script with my colleague Thomas Mogotlane. In that time,
who is this the lead actor
the lead,
yeah,
who's the lead, sadly passed away early 90s, and we worked on this together. But on top of that, I had to leave the country. All white men were conscripted into the army, and I didn't go to my call-up. So basically, for all intents and purposes, I was AWOL and got a job editing in Germany, and we were writing long distance, corresponding. And then I just went back on, I got 2 passports. I went back on my German passport, hoping they wouldn't realize, and they didn't, thankfully. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was a different time.
Where and what's his name, the actor again?
Thomas Mogotlane. Yeah.
Yes, Thomas. How did you meet him originally? How did you know Thomas?
When I'd finished art school, I spent 2 years in Johannesburg. I registered for a master's because I knew as soon as I stopped being at university, I would have had to go to the army. And I started editing. Right. I started editing in that time period, and I met other like-minded people. And I met him through common friends at that time, and we'd actually made a Super 8 movie together. And I kept in touch with Thomas when I went to live in Germany, and we got on very well. And in that Super 8 film we made, he had this character, this persona, which has a lot to do with the film Mapantsula. Not because he was a gangster, not at all. He was a school teacher, a choir master. He became an actor. But he went from a small town to go and live in Soweto and had to learn the hard way to survive and to survive against exactly these kind of characters that he plays in the film.
Kafirs.
So it was a very interesting, insightful character study that he did, and we talked about this at length. And I thought, well, okay, a simple gangster story is interesting, but it's far more interesting if the hero of the story, like this, is an anti-hero.
Yes,
and somebody who has this conversion to not being the perfect, politically idealistic human being, but who realizes he can't keep on the way he does. So I've had critics compare it to Frank Capra a few times in terms of a certain optimism about doing the right thing. And I got no problem with that. Yeah, it's okay. I've been told this a few times with my movies. So, there is a kind of idealism in the film about, finding the right path and doing the right thing. And it's kind of what it's about. And it's
yeah. It's a redemption story just as much as it is a story about solidarity and fighting against the dark side, the dark forces, but it's one man's own inner battle, of course, with living a life doing for his own needs and his own safe, what have you. And then obviously when he is actually putting his fellow brothers and sisters in danger, he's really comes to terms with that inner conflict.
Yeah, and that's why this time frame, the puzzle of the timeline was for me something that gave the story a certain energy to keep you guessing. How is this going to play out, and to understand the complexity of his life.
Yeah, it was not so black and white, no pun intended. I mean, it was
exactly.
He's a complicated, real person.
Yeah, that was the point. And also, a lot of people were surprised that, oh, there's black policemen in South Africa as well. Yeah, of course there were black policemen.
Of course, it's always been the case, right? There's always been the case, you know, in all cases of oppression. There's always, you know, the traitors.
Collaboration in some
collaborationists, exactly right, exactly. So you know, yeah, never. And I mean, South Africa is a great case where that was happening. It's such a documentary style, you know, to the film. Obviously, with great attention.
It's a style. Well, look, I was 26. I was a very young filmmaker, but it's also taking the moment as it comes and placing these characters in real situations and making do with little money and tapping into the energy of the moment. You know, this crowd of people who chant and sing, they were extras, but of course they knew these songs and they knew the meaning of them and they performed them with a complete conviction, you know, so in that sense, there is a certain kind of documentary nature to it. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, it makes sense also because you were stealing all those shots, right? I mean, I use that term where that usually applies to when a filmmaker is shooting without getting licensed or proper permission to shoot in a place. But you were intentionally misrepresenting what you're filming. What was it that you were telling people? And I don't know if they were the authorities or just people that, you know, were extras or, you know, that you ran into, maybe that you want to avoid trouble. What was it? What was the story that you guys were telling?
Well, firstly, there was a fake script. There was a script which had nothing to do with this. The characters were in the story. The characters were gangsters. There was none of the politics, nothing. I've still got a copy somewhere because we did a book last year. So I pulled it out and I looked at it and said, "Wow, okay, this is a parallel universe." But it gave the actors a cover story to some degree, and they needed that because we got stopped a few times. And and the actor who plays the unionist in the story, he gave a whole performance of his own because he convinced the police and army patrols who stopped, because he was wearing a union T-shirt, saying, no, we're actually showing how bad these people are and how they're trying to destroy our beautiful society and all the wonderful things that South Africa is. You know, he laid it on, and they bought it, you know. Yeah, and I'm curious. Before I ask this next part about one of your actors, I should set up, for those listening or watching, I should set up a little bit of the story, because Thomas, the actor, and your writer, or co-writer of the actually deployed script, not the fake one, not the decoy script, but the script used in the film. He wrote that or co-wrote it with you? He did indeed. Yeah.
He's also the casting director, as far as I saw, I think, in the credits. And
Absolutely.
He's the lead actor. He plays Panic. His name is Panic, interestingly. And I'm not sure if it has another meaning in Afrikaans or what have you.
No. You'll laugh, because he came up with the name because he grew up on American film noir films. And there was a film called Panic in the Streets.
In the Streets, sure. Yeah. A classic. Yeah. Oh, wow. Well, I'm having more and more admiration for him. I'm sorry he's gone. Would have been great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm sure he would have been very happy about the 4K restoration of Mapantsula. You know, and
you know, I did a cast and crew screening in 2023. After all these years, the first cast and crew screening. So a lot of people not around anymore. Yeah. But like with him and other actors who are not there anymore, I invited the families. So it was incredibly emotional, and they were super appreciative of this, because it's a moment to pay tribute, you know. And and so he wasn't there, but his whole family was there. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. how proud they must have been, not just because their dad was a good actor and was I mean, there is just a silent strength to his performance, but he also has a undeniable charisma on the screen.
Yes,
you know,
yes,
and he's
yes.
very good looking, and you really can't take your eyes off him whenever he's on screen.
Yeah, yeah.
And he plays Panic, who is a kafir or a bit of a thug, right? They rob people that, you know, they assume have money and on the streets, and kind of just you know, making his way through you know, life without trying to avoid legit work, right? And he has something of a relationship with this woman Pat, right?
Yes.
Who's played by a well-known, she's still alive, right?
Tempe and Charlie. She came to the Berlin screening 2 years ago of the restoration, and absolutely, she's great.
Yeah,
And
she's a singer.
She's a singer. She's an actor.
An actor.
And she's very active still. So yeah, it was great she was there.
So and she works for an Afrikaner employer as she's a housekeeper or maid. And who is the actor who plays her employer? Because I was wondering about the relationship with her and where was she a real actor? And
she absolutely, they were all actors and they were all good actors. And I've just hit a blank, Vanessa. I can't remember.
That's okay.
But they all, virtually everybody in this film was an actor, and different acting school traditions. But you know, she and the actor Marcel van Heerden, who played the policeman,
who played the police, yeah,
you know, they very committed, not only actors, but they were very committed activists to change.
Yeah.
And she was involved many years in something called the theatre laboratory to train young actors to act in Johannesburg. And you know, so it was not in any way a kind of us and them scenario between black and white actors in this film.
No.
And in this sort of weird society, everybody had the same value and status, and never questioned that, you know. So there was a good camaraderie. Not that everybody knew all the details about the story. We were too worried about that. Yeah. But Thomas and a lot of the other actors, they came from what used to be called township theatre, and there were a few directors in townships like Soweto who were very good theatre directors, and they did independent theatre work through the 70s and 80s, and some of them got banned for their political content.
Mm-hmm.
But the actors that came out of there were incredibly well trained. And Thomas, he doesn't have to say anything as an actor. I just appreciate even seeing how he moves through frame. You know, he has got an incredible body language. And they came from this rigorous training where me as a young director, all I can say is I'm so lucky that I worked with all these people.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, it's not surprising that many of those people that are in the arts, you know, were also anti-apartheid.
Well, absolutely, yeah. I mean, I came from a relatively naive white upbringing, where latest when you get to university, you realize, okay, well, this is seriously messed up, but you have to be honest and say, okay, I can understand it intellectually, but I cannot feel it in the same way as my black counterpart, because they grew up like this with every restriction placed on them possible and every humiliation you can think of possible, and yet remained polite, generous, with integrity, and optimistic. You know, so it taught me a lot of lessons of working with everybody involved on this. Yeah.
And then you had to sneak, I suppose, or, well, I don't know if you had to sneak out the film out of the country because they didn't know you made this film. So,
well, actually, we did.
happened?
Actually, we did, because when we were editing, there was only one film laboratory, and there were people in that laboratory who were either working for or very sympathetic to the government, and they started seeing this footage
wow.
and the riot footage and so on. So first thing is, there was some damage to negative, and we think it was deliberate. And then some people started coming to the edit room claiming to be journalists, but the security police, as they were called, they had a very specific look, and it wasn't a kind of fashion that people generally wore. You know, even if it was gray shoes or a certain kind of cut to the pants or a certain kind of a old-fashioned leather jacket, they try to look casual, but you could spot them immediately. So we knew there was a problem.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
And then they demanded a copy of the film, and our lawyer said, "Well, you're going to have to give them a copy." And we moved all the negative into a bonded warehouse at the airport, which is essentially out of South African sovereignty. And we sent them a VHS. And I then took 10 cans of negative to London to Technicolor to store it there. Meanwhile, we never heard anything back from them, nothing. And we thought, this is very, very strange. It turned out eventually they lost the cassette, and they were too embarrassed to admit that they'd made a mistake.
I love that story. That's such a great story. Did you ever write? Did you ever write any of this down? Did you ever?
I've talked about it, but it's almost like a mini series.
It is. I mean, the making of this film is compelling enough. You know, I mean, it's like I think you have a book there. You know, just
yeah.
When did? I mean, I would read it. When did you? When was the opportunity finally? Let me rephrase this. When was there finally an opportunity to show Mapantsula to South African audience?
Well, this is the whole weird schizophrenic thing. We got permission for a few festival screenings because festivals was a small intellectual audience and didn't present an obvious danger of inciting the masses as their fear was. They wanted us to make about 10 cuts to the film, which were basically cutting out all the main politics of the film. And we said no. And it created a rift with the producer because he, feeling financial pressure, wanted to do this to get a release in South Africa. So that created a lot of tension. We didn't do that. But at the same time, the film premiered in Cannes in the film festival. So, I mean, suddenly we were there on the world stage with the film, and it was out there, and they couldn't do much. But in terms of South Africa, because we didn't want to edit it, we then let it go out on VHS and said, please take this film and pirate it.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. Yeah.
Did you, so with the Cannes, was that spring of 88 or 89?
That was 88. That was 88, yeah.
Was it
same year as Sex, Lives, and Videotapes?
That's great. At Cannes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. What you had mentioned before that they're really cracking down in South Africa. There was a lot of there was a rise in violence and cracking down on protests, probably on right at the time. And was there a sense, because the world was really pushing back against apartheid, there was probably a lot of pressure, I'm guessing, building, or maybe those in a position of authority could see that it was coming, and perhaps this was the response to that,
well, that's
in
what
South
happened,
Africa.
Yeah, that's what happened. But we didn't see that yet. We didn't know that.
Oh.
In the beginning of 1990, when there were suddenly announcements that things were changing, we were taken by surprise completely.
The cultural boycotts, etc.
Oh yeah, it played an influence, and the and the economic boycotts that happened.
Oh, right.
It all played a significant role. And there was a UN resolution about boycotts and sanctions against South Africa. And the UK, Europe, and America held out for a long time and then joined this. And then it started to really hurt. But, you know, the Cold War was over as well. So that whole political support that was there because South Africa was, people didn't think about this, but South Africa was part of the Cold War because all the states around South Africa were essentially communist states. So, you know, it was in a geopolitical interests, American interest, that South Africa remained this bastion against the communist neighbors.
Right. Yeah, it's a little complicated in the sense that a lot of these Afrikaner, you know, the police, like your actor who played the or the character who plays the police at the jail where the black protesters are being held. It keeps talking about the communist infiltration, right? And were these guys, did they self-identify as communists? Those South African protesters?
They saw themselves, look, I was part of the movement. They saw themselves as socialists, as a socialist movement,
right?
As a movement for the working class. The working class was the main theme of this uprising, and grassroots politics, as in community organizations. You know, so it was, there was a South African Communist Party, but the main thrust was. I don't know how much differentiation is in American politics between communism and socialism, but it was the socialist ideal was very strongly behind it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So even those guys that, let's say, those characters were loosely based on actual cases where there's protest, of course, against the oppression. They would have thought of themselves as socialists.
Absolutely, or as representatives of the working class, because the general perception is that black society was the working class, and that, you know, this is where it all morphed into one. You know, it changed very quickly after 1990, when the leaders of the working class got given shares in big companies, and they were no longer the working class. You know, you have this dichotomy between a super rich black elite and the traditional black working class. You know, but then it was seen as one entity. Yeah.
Wow. Well, and finally, I'm going to wind things down for you because but I'm curious to know how Film Movement, this distributor here, did they approach you? How did the 4K come about, and then now the distribution or the redistribution, if you will, of Mapantsula? How did that come about?
Well, I work with a colleague in London. We have a small company. And he's quite a bit younger than me, and he is very pushy sometimes when he thinks something is good and should be done. And he gave me the shove to finally do this restoration, you know, and nobody gave us money for it. I did it before we had any commitments for anything, and so he got the Berlinale Film Festival in their section Berlinale Classics interested, and it's the first South African film they've shown in classics, and it was with a Cronenberg film and a Charlie Chaplin film. So you know, hey, this was great. Okay.
Yes.
And we had we had a great screening. And once it was done, we spoke to a few distributors in North America, and the BFI did it in the UK, and the Independent Cinema Organization in England did a cinema tour, which was great, and Film Movement have been a great partner on this. And we did a small cinema release in South Africa, and then sold it to Netflix Africa. You know, so the journey carried on, and I'm very pleased that it's been done, because the negative was already in an incredibly poor state. and thankfully I used to be an editor, so I kind of know how to work with the material and to find the film in the sort of
After it's scanned?
Got scanned. It looked terrible
Yeah.
after the scan. I had to
Yeah.
regrade, get rid of blotching, scratching,
Sure.
out of focus shots, everything. Yeah.
Wow. It's a miracle, kind of, though, how it turns out. It's a beautiful restoration, isn't it? You must be
I'm very happy. I'm very happy
yeah.
with it. Yeah.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
your legacy, right? It's your legacy. It's
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a legacy of a lot of other people.
right.
And I thought it would be the beginning of a film movement in South Africa of these kind of underdog films. You know, I mean, gangster films used to be underdog films. They used to have this political value, I think, often underestimated. And I thought, okay, so it's going to be the first of many underdog films, but not really. So I want to go. I've made other films in South Africa. My second film was also kind of an underdog film, and then I noticed that we're actually the new powers that be aren't that in favor of underdog films because they want aspirational stories, and it's kind of don't put a downer on our new values. You know, it's it's not a critique to put anybody down, but society works like that, and so it's not a political polemic story. It's a funny human life story about people who are at the lower end of society. Yeah.
Well, it's good timing for the Mapantsula to come out in the United States, given the topics at hand. You know,
okay.
the timing
I'd
couldn't
be
be better.
Yes.
Yeah, you know,
yes.
people should watch this film, and there is definitely topics, themes that they can relate to right now.
Cool.
So
Yeah.
I look forward to spreading the word as much as I can anyway.
Thank you. Thank you.
Of course. Yeah, and I look forward to catching up with the rest of your films. I'm not sure I've seen them. You know, I have to rectify that error.
Okay, if you like, I'll send you a Vimeo link. You can have a look.
I would. I really would. Yeah, very much so. I look forward to that. And it's just Adam. I mean, if you want to write down my email, I don't know if you have it. I don't know if they shared that with you. Did they forward emails to you?
It might be in the email with Mike Krause. I'm not sure though. Just a moment. Okay, Adam Small, written small.
Yeah, I mean,
small
it doesn't matter. It doesn't on an email. I don't think it matters. But Adam at Filmwax, FILMWAX.com.
Yeah. Okay.
Filmwax.com. And yeah, I would love to see whatever, anything and everything. You know.
Okay.
You know, it'd be a pleasure to reconnect when the next film is restored, or if that should happen.
Or the new one comes out. Yeah.
And the new one, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have another conversation then. That'd be
Yes.
great.
Cool.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Oliver. It's been great meeting you and talking to you.
Likewise.
All right. Have a nice evening.
You too.
Afternoon
Okay.
and evening.
Afternoon.